an old friend of mine, a veritable Renaissance man, attorney, actor, writer, Chaz Carey. Chaz Carey, welcome to Office Hours.
Hello, Mr. Green, and hello to everyone watching in New Bedford and elsewhere. Nice to be here.
Now, you're calling in from New York, is that right?
That's right, Brooklyn, New York.
Brooklyn, New York. And so can you tell, just for some context, the viewers at home, what is it exactly that you do in Brooklyn, New York?
So my current job is I actually work for the city of New York. The city of New York has 5 boroughs. Manhattan is the most famous. That's the one that most people think of when you think of New York. But all 5 of the boroughs have a city government, one city government, and I work for that government. My office is called the Office of Housing Recovery Operations, and that's a long, fancy way of saying that we do some of the work in helping people get back home if their homes were damaged or destroyed by Hurricane Sandy, which hit New York City in 2012. So that's almost 8 years ago. In October of 2012, the hurricane hit, and New York City is still recovering from that hurricane today, although it's gotten much better, but there are still aspects of the recovery that are ongoing.
So even 8 years later, and that's right, actually, on a previous episode of Office Hours, we were talking with a guest, Lily Kobielski, who was describing the effect of Hurricane Sandy in New York, and she was talking about how much destruction there was. So do you work within one borough in particular, or across the whole city?
We work across the whole city, as is, New York City is very unique, and I don't think it's the same in New Bedford, although I could be wrong. There are not a lot of single-family homes in New York. That is to say, most people live in apartment buildings. The housing is very dense. A lot of people live together. But the people who do live in single-family homes, or homes where 2 or 3 families live together, they tend to be closer to the water because they were originally designed as beachfront communities, places where people would go on vacation. And then the city just got so big that they became part of the city. So boroughs like Brooklyn have places like Coney Island, which is a famous kind of resort neighborhood, a place where people would go to amusement parks in the 20s and 30s, and now it's a residential neighborhood that still has that kind of boardwalk. But that was all very heavily damaged by the hurricane. In Queens, there's an area called the Rockaways, which is an island, almost like a sandbar or a berm, as they call it, that was very heavily damaged. You might think of islands, in Cape Cod that are like that kind of sit just off the coast, that were very heavily damaged by the hurricane. So, and then there's also neighborhoods on Staten Island, which is looks more residential than the rest of the city does. So it's all over the place.
And residential means a neighborhood where it's mostly housing as opposed to businesses or stores or that kind of thing.
That's right. Yes.
Excellent. So, speaking of government, obviously governments have to rely on different kinds of laws. My understanding is that you work for the city because you are a lawyer, and so part of your job requires you to know some of the laws involved in getting people their houses back.
That's right.
I understand this right?
Yes. Yes.
So, how many laws are there?
That is a good question. There are a lot of laws. There are a lot of laws, and it is impossible for any one person to know all of them. Even the judges on the Supreme Court of the United States, who are viewed as very knowledgeable and powerful, they have a staff of 4 or 5 very high-powered lawyers underneath them called law clerks, who help them understand what the law is. So even people who are, judges and who are in positions of very high authority do not know what all the laws are, and they need help from other people to research and understand not just what every law is, but how they interact with each other.
So would you say you work as part of a team then in your office for the city of New York, and you have a team of people who are working together? It's almost like a group project at school.
Exactly. It often feels like a group project at school. We all have different parts of the job that we need to do, and we all check in together and say, how are you doing with this part of it? Do you need help? And we get the job done as best we can.
But what happens when there's a partner you don't want to work with? That happens sometimes.
That's hard. Yeah. That's hard. But I hate to say it, but it continues into adulthood sometimes. You just have to say sometimes, this isn't my favorite person to work with. They don't always do what I want them to do. They don't understand the way I want them to understand. But I have to put on a good face and be friendly and make compromises and try and do the best job we can together.
And part of that is because the job that you're trying to do is taking care of the people of the city of New York, right? You're trying to make sure that the city is livable and, um, a, a place, like a strong community.
That's right.
So what are some things that you do to help one another on your team in your office through your specific role there, getting people their houses back?
Sure. So I'm what they call the General Counsel. So I am the head lawyer in the office, and I have a number of lawyers who work underneath me, who are my associates, and I have one person who is my deputy. And all of those people, a deputy means, kind of second in command, or next person in line. And associate is as a rank lower than that. It means like a colleague, or someone who is on a slightly lower level. And we work together by assigning out different jobs. People have different specialties. I have a colleague who is very good at addressing when a homeowner has a complaint. A homeowner says, "I don't like how you rebuilt my house," or when you rebuilt the house, my neighbor got more space, and I don't think they deserve that. One of my colleagues is very good at addressing those. She's very thorough. And so I often say to her, "You're good at this and you like doing it, so you are in charge." So things like that to make sure that people who are good at certain things are assigned to those things.
Excellent. I got another question for you. How do you deal with all that pressure, though? It sounds like there's just a lot that you have to do. And as we said before, I mean, not only do you work for the city of New York, but I'm aware that you do some acting, you do some writing, and I've also heard that you may or may not have a small child at home. How do you get it done?
You have here too. You have to be cognizant of your schedule. You have to be aware. You have to know what your schedule is. You have to prioritize. You have to say, okay, this is the most important thing. This is the next most important thing. You have to take care of yourself, and you have to take care of the people in your life. I'm very lucky. You're right, Mr. Green. I have a very young daughter who is actually just up from her nap and is playing with her mother because she's not feeling very camera friendly right now. So I'm sorry I can't show her to you. But my wife, Christina, and I are a good team, right? We try and prioritize things together. She also has a very demanding series of jobs. She's an entrepreneur, which means she's a businesswoman who likes to start businesses and work through businesses like that. She's a teacher herself now. She's going to be teaching. So she wears a lot of different hats, as they say. She does a lot of different things, and so do I. And so we just make sure that we always talk to each other and be clear on what it is that we're doing together. And we make sure that we make time to have fun, too.
Mm-hmm. So you always teamwork comes back again. It's always about working together, collaborating, communicating. So you talked about priorities. So it sounds like you do kind of keep a schedule every day, but you know like where your priorities are. What are the most important things you have to do each day?
Yes, although one of the things that I like about my job is that I have never been a particularly well-organized person. My desk is always messy. Mr. Green will tell you that. My space is always messy, and my wife is very tolerant of that. She is a much neater person than I am. One of the things that I like about my job is because it is so high pressured, there are times when someone calls you and says, "You must solve this problem right now." And I am capable of saying, "Okay, well, I'm okay with leaving this as it is if it means that I can solve this immediate problem, and then I can come back to the problem before." So while I try and be as scheduled and regimented as possible, it is possible to have a job where you're called to address things very quickly, and you have to just think very carefully and thoroughly about how to prioritize and address things that way.
I love it. I think I know exactly what you're talking about. Maybe not quite to the same volume of things at any one time, but I understand it. Hey, what do you think would happen if there were no laws in any places?
Oh, there are philosophers who ask that question all the time. On a very simple level, right? People put laws together to make sure that we get along in society. That's the point of law. I worked for a judge now about 5 years ago, a very old judge who was very smart. He was 92 when I worked for him, and he is now 96, still alive, still working. a really brilliant guy. And when he would talk to criminals, people who had been convicted of crimes, one of the things that he would say is, we use the term outlaw to mean criminal in our society. And what that really means is someone who has chosen to live beyond the law, someone who can't be a part of society because we have agreed on these rules and you don't want to follow the rules. So there are consequences for that, which means we place you outside of society. We put you in jail, or we ask you to do community service so that you can be a better member of the community. That's the purpose that law serves. And I think a lot of people think that if there were no laws, people who didn't want to live peacefully together with each other would behave that way, would behave in a like outlaws behave now, and there would be no consequences to that.
Mm-hmm. I got it. Two quick questions before we finish up. I want to thank you for taking the time to talk to us today. Hurricane Sandy happened in 2012. Did people know that it was going to be that severe, and like how did they plan for it, or could they plan for it? Is that why it's taking so long to clean up after the fact?
That's a tough question. There are a number of factors, and I know you don't have a lot of time, but I think in a nutshell, quickly, that is to say, some of the issues were New York City does not get a lot of hurricanes. And the year previously in New York, there was a threat of a hurricane called Hurricane Irene. And when Hurricane Irene hit, it actually did not hit New York City that badly. And so a lot of people said, oh, there's a warning, but there was a warning last time and it wasn't so bad. And so when the hurricane came and it was so bad, a lot of people were caught unaware. And that was unfortunate. And I also just think because New York doesn't see a lot of hurricanes, it's really hard for New York to figure out how to recover from a hurricane. We're not a place like Florida, which sees a lot of hard weather like this and has a structure in place to recover from it.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense. So my second to last question, I should say, is you were talking about priorities and how every day you have to think about like what's the most important. Where did appearing on office hours this afternoon fit into today's priority for you, Chaz Carey, Renaissance man, lawyer for the city of New York?
I was thrilled. I made time. I wanted to make time for this because it was just so exciting to me to be able to talk with you, Mr. Green, and with your class. I hope I was able to answer some of your questions. I hope I wasn't boring, but very nice to see you and to see virtually your students.
Yeah, this is a delight, and I'm really glad that you're able to join us as well. Speaking of those students, do you have any last parting words of wisdom, anything that you would want the kids at home to think about as they move forward in this new reality, the youth of New Bedford, Massachusetts? Sure.
One thing that I've always been told by parents and by guidance counselors and so forth is, hey, you should, if you're good at one thing, you should really stick with that one thing, and you don't have to worry about everything else that you do. I think if you like a lot of things, you should do a lot of things, and you should see how they fit together. You should think about how you might want to prioritize those. I like acting, but acting is not my job day in, day out. I like writing, but writing is not my job day in, day out. But I'm able to do all those things because I'm very fortunate to have the wonderful family that I have, and two, I can prioritize those things. So I hope that you don't feel like you have to do just one thing in your life. I hope you can do a lot of things at once and try a lot of stuff, even if you don't like it at first. Who knows? So good luck to all of you, and learn new things and try new things.
Thank you very much, Chaz Carey from Brooklyn, New York. That was great advice. I hope that the youth take it to heart. In the meantime, my name is still Mr. Green, and I'm still here in New Bedford, Massachusetts. Wishing all of you a blessed spring. Take care of one another, and peace.